All right. Well, welcome everybody. Resume envy? Anyone? It's
I had resume envy over yours, quite frankly.
a life well lived so far. And of course, well, we might as well jump right in because WWE's coming to town with WrestleMania.
That's right.
So you want to, I think actually, first of all, we have, since we're both communications majors, what we call in the biz the sizzle reel. So we would like to take you on a little journey right now, a little deep dive into WWE. Did you get all that? If you want to join in, by the way, on social media, at WWE, and then we have a hashtag WrestleMania and a hashtag Beyond Barrier. So get the photos out there and spread the word, because WrestleMania is coming to town. Integral behind the scenes, but also you've been a part of it, right? With Ronda Rousey a couple years back?
She broke
Sorry
my arm.
to bring that right up, but
She didn't really break my arm. That's the way the match ended.
What still excites you about this event and bringing it to new places like Tampa?
Oh, well, gosh, WrestleMania is like our Super Bowl. So it's our biggest event. It's what we build to all year long. And on a personal note, you know, when you look at our business, our genre, it used to be territorial. So my grandfather ran the Northeast Territory, and then there was the Southern Territory, Midwest, you know, et cetera. And my father, Vince McMahon, who's the chairman and CEO, had the vision to really create one global brand, and that's what he did. But my grandfather, who was friends with all of these other promoters and did business with all of these other promoters, kept saying, Vinny, why you gotta rock the boat, Vinny? Don't rock the boat, Vinny. You know, all this stuff. My friends keep calling, Vinny, what are you doing? And my dad, when he finally thought of WrestleMania, which was his way of putting WWE on the map, you know, back in 1985, how did you get people talking across all different forms of media without social media?
You rock the boat. That's what you do.
You rock the boat. That's right. And, you know, so my father put on WrestleMania 1 and my mother, who was the CEO of WWE at the time, and they mortgaged everything that they owned to make WrestleMania 1 happen. And it was a huge success, but unfortunately, my grandfather passed right before WrestleMania 1 happened. So WrestleMania every year means something so much more to us than just our Super Bowl, which is big enough. You know, there's a lot of emotional sentiment there.
I got to believe he is still very much a part of it.
I certainly feel him there.
Yes. Well, our friend Billie Jean King likes to say that pressure is a privilege. So
Amen.
No pressure stepping right into the family business, which is also one of the biggest brands in the world. So what is that like for you and your family? It's got to be a heavy responsibility, but also a heck of a lot of fun.
You summed it up right there. Family business is unique. Is anybody here in family business? No. Oh, yes. You can relate. We've got each other. It has a lot of unique challenges, but also a lot of unique opportunities. Because when you're all working together, sharing the same passion, driving towards the same goal, your wins are that much sweeter and your losses are that much more crushing, you know, but you're in it together and there's strength in that.
Speaking of strength, and since we have a large female audience with us, obviously you have played an integral role both on and off screen with empowering a lot of women within WWE and empowering a large fan base around WWE. So what has that been like for you to not only open those doors, but then help a lot of other people come through those doors?
Well, I think you mentioned before responsibility, right? I feel like it's our responsibility. It's all of our responsibilities to lift each other up and give those opportunities. You know, I think the greatest part of my resume was the last thing that was said, which are my 3 girls, right? I'm a mom. I have 3 daughters, and I never want them to see any barriers in their way because of their gender. You know, they can absolutely do anything in this world that they want to do, but they have to work really hard for it. And I try to set that example and never give up on their passion. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do everything we can to help break those barriers down and empower the women all around us, whether that be in sports, whether that be in business, whether that be in media. You know, we've got to do it. We've got to lift each other up and provide the opportunity, because once women have the opportunity, man, We steal the show every time.
You mentioned your daughters. You have an opportunity to have a huge impact on them. But then through WWE, a lot of other daughters out there that you have an impact on. Tell us a little bit about your mom, Linda, her influence on you, and what you pass along to your daughters and your WWE children, even if it's the occasional, I can't believe I just said that, because that's what my mom always used to say.
That happens all the time. But I only recognize it in the moment, so I'm not exactly sure what those are. But my mom, when I was growing up, she was the CEO of WWE. So I never saw gender as a barrier to being the boss. I just assumed that's what women did. And that's why I'm so emphatic about the notion of seeing her, like being vocal, being present, and getting out there. Even though it's not, in everyone's nature to be front and center, I do think it's so important to show girls what they can be and what they can do, that it's an option. Because if you never see it, you might not never know that opportunity exists. This past year at WrestleMania, it took us 35 years, but our women were the main event.
Yes. Let's see, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Ronda Rousey was there, and that was in New York, right?
That was in
you
New
took
York.
on the Big Apple.
MetLife Stadium.
Yes.
And they broke the entertainment revenue record at MetLife Stadium. Ooh. Yes. But just 6 years prior, the only women's match at WrestleMania at MetLife Stadium was cut for time.
Ooh.
So how far we've come.
Yes.
And I said to those women, I just had a moment in that day before the doors opened, and I called them over. And I thanked them, because when I was a little girl sitting in the audience watching WrestleMania, the women were certainly not the main event. And now I thanked these women because for my 3 daughters, and as you mentioned, for all the daughters sitting in the audience, those girls won't know any different than that women should be the main event.
That was quite a spectacle to witness, and there were more wins that night than both the Jets and Giants combined in MetLife last year.
I didn't say it.
I'll keep my Buccaneers chatter to myself for the time being, but I, as a former season ticket holder here, when I lived here, I know there are brighter days coming, and I'm excited for that. Why are you guys laughing? You not only mentioned that, but today, right, there was the first championship women's match in Saudi Arabia.
In Saudi Arabia.
You had an all-female pay-per-view event recently, and Renee Young, right, is the first full-time female
Renee
commentator.
was the first full-time female commentator. She was snatched away by Fox when we did our Fox deal. So she's now hosting a number of different shows.
Growth.
We did have our first ever all-women's pay-per-view called Evolution, and that was a year and a half ago. And people asked, how successful was it? Well, not only did it sell out Nassau Coliseum, over 10,000 people, but it trended #1 worldwide for over 2.5 hours during the last game of the World Series and NFL Sunday Night Football.
Wow, fabulous.
It took us 6 years in Abu Dhabi to have a women's match, and this happened a couple of years ago. And during that match, our performers had to change their gear, so only their heads and their hands were exposed. But a chant broke out in the audience of men and women chanting, "This is hope," which is not your typical WWE chant. But they were chanting, "This is hope." And there were tears in the eyes of little girls in the front row, because that's the power of a movement. That's what we can all do and how we can help impact the world. Then we had our first ever women's match in Saudi Arabia this past October. And today, which is tonight there, we just had our first ever women's championship match.
The growth continues. That is fabulous. The growth of the audience also continues, right? I think we're 40% or nearly 40%. Which is very close to the female viewership for the NFL. So some amazing numbers. So I'll ask the universal question: what do women want in their sports and in their entertaining? Because you guys obviously are so good at storytelling and drama on a weekly basis.
Well, I think you nailed it, right? I think women, the difference oftentimes, and I don't want to be just categorical and this is what men like and this is what women like, I think that everybody loves a great story. I think everybody loves great characters. And the action and athleticism has really stepped up to such an incredible level. I mean, when you watch WWE today, it's hard not to have your jaw drop on the floor when you see Charlotte Flair doing a moonsault, off the top rope to outside the ring, backwards. Like, oh my God, what? And she does that no problem, no fear. And you just see what these women and men can do, and it is mind-boggling. You can't turn the channel.
I think that's a huge step in a lot of the sports I cover.
Is that a dated term, turn the channel? No?
You know what?
still say
Actually, I
that?
do believe it is. I remember the days where you had to go back up
Turn
to the TV.
channel, that's what I'm saying.
And then you had the box with the long cord. Remember, you push the buttons, and then you'd click for the top or the bottom.
Yeah.
It may just be able to press the channel, might be the...
Yeah.
Or actually, now you can talk into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just say, change the channel.
Change the channel.
I think that's a big step, though, especially for the male audience, when you're watching females play sports, your initial thought is, well, I can do that. Oh, wait, no, I can't do that. And that we're seeing that now in a lot of different sports.
But one of the things that I think needs to happen for women in sports is promotion.
Yes.
Through all of the media partners, and we're a part of a program called See Her in Sports. We're part of a number of different programs, but See Her in Sports. And, that's one of the critical missions. You talk about the Final Four. You talk about the WNBA championship. Talk about women's hockey. When are those games on?
Yeah.
You would know. Do you guys know? You know why? Because no one knows. Because no one talks about it. It's not promoted. When you look at top 10 highlights, if you're watching, I won't name any particular media organization, but if you're watching Plays of the Week, how many of those plays have women's sports in them? And let me tell you, women can throw down. They have some pretty awesome plays. And I'm not saying they got to be the whole thing, but at least have some representation in there to drive interest, to drive viewership, because I think men want to watch great sports regardless of who's playing.
Yes.
And women too, but you have to let them know when it's on.
Yep. Good news is that I do know that softball will actually lead the Olympic coverage this year. They start playing softball a couple of days before the opening ceremony, so we can look forward to that. I'm not sure who's calling those yet, but the one theme, though, that when I hear your story and I can relate, and I'm sure a lot of other women can relate. I grew up with 3 brothers. I grew up with a dad who was a coach. I grew up with a mom who, when I asked her if I could be a sportscaster, she said, yes, you can. So the support of a good man, the support of a good spouse, the support of the people around you, so instrumental. And I know your husband and obviously your dad and your grandfather have had a lot to do with the way that now they have men watching women perform and compete and play.
Absolutely. My husband actually is one of the big reasons, and his name is Triple H, his performer name. His real name is Paul.
Is that what you call him all the time, or how does that work?
No, but in Life Imitated Art, we were married and divorced on TV before we were actually married in real life. It's a long story. But I had to learn not to call him Hunter. That's how I met him, he was Hunter. And then when we finally got engaged, I was like, I think I should start calling him Paul, because this is just weird. My business is weird. We all have multiple names. It's just the way it is. It's hard to explain. But.
Do you have a fondest memory or a first memory when you fell in love with it all?
With our business or my husband?
Your husband may be a more personal one, but I don't know. We're all friends now, if you want to share that. But just the WWE, and I have to be a part of this. Because for a lot of us, I think there's no fallback position. This is always what I wanted to do, and I got to figure out a way to make it work. So was that the same for you?
It was, because for me, being a part of our business was always about giving back to my family. My parents were grinding it out, working as hard as they possibly could to make our business the success that it is now. And, they couldn't afford a nanny or anything, so I was a tag along, right? And I'd be in all the business dinners and go to NatP, and, I have all these terrible pictures of me from the 80s. It's so bad. But, yeah, for me, it was always a way to give back. And I always thrived on the creative, actually. That's what I fell in love with first. And sitting and listening to my father work with his creative writing team, because he worked round the clock and he'd work at the house a lot during those days. And I would just sit and listen and try to take it all in. And the storytelling aspect is just so incredible. And it really is more like the Rocky movie than a boxing match, if you think about it that way. But getting back to your original question about the women's evolution and men supporting women, my husband is really the one who started recruiting elite female athletes the same as the men. He's the one who started training the women the same as the men. Then he started giving our women more match time. So when they had that equal share of match time, it's like anything else. The more reps you have, the more practice you have, the better you're going to get. And then these women started to steal the show, literally. The audience started chanting, "This is wrestling," and "Women's wrestling." They started demanding more. So then there was a show, Monday Night Raw on USA Network, and it's a 3-hour show. And there was a women's match that lasted all of 30 seconds, which unfortunately was the norm. And our fans had had enough. And they started a hashtag called Give Divas a Chance, because at that time, that's how we branded our women's division. It trended worldwide for 3 days. Our fans, men and women, were demanding more match time, more athleticism, more character development, better storytelling. And their voices were so loud, my father responded, "We hear you, keep watching, hashtag Give Divas a Chance." So then strategically at WrestleMania, at that time at AT&T Stadium in front of over 101,000 people, we had WWE Hall of Famer Lita go out and announce the rebranding of the Divas division to the women's division. She unveiled a new championship belt that was more like the men's but still very feminine, and announced that our women would now be called superstars, same as the men.
Fabulous, fabulous. Yep. Now, you mentioned your affinity for the creative. Do you get input, or do you write some of your own stuff?
Oh, my own stuff.
I mean, you're a villain, right? That's gotta be fun.
It's the most fun. It's the most fun to be the bad guy. Oh my gosh, it's like the hardest thing on earth to be the good guy.
Yeah.
Because then you feel like it's yourself out there, and like, oh, maybe they're gonna like me. Like, no, it's way easier to make people hate you, especially when you're the boss's daughter. It's good.
Where do you, does research show where the passion comes from with the fan base, or where the love comes from, or how do you try and tap into that in a lot of different ways?
So when we talk about WrestleMania, right, and you think about the uniqueness of this, that people come from all 50 states, and last year over 68 different countries, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, religious beliefs, political beliefs, and they all come together to share this one thing that they love, this passion for WWE, for WrestleMania itself. They plan trips all year long, communicating, however they communicate, not on the telephone necessarily, right? Because we're not dating ourselves anymore. We're texting, we're on social media.
We don't dial people up anymore.
We don't dial.
Either.
We don't. There's no cord. And that's what they do, and they plan this whole trip, and it's like a giant family reunion. And I don't know of any other brand that truly brings people together like that. If you're sitting in the audience at any one of our live events and you say, okay, now, who's that guy or who's that girl? 6 people around you will turn around and tell you their entire backstory. Well, since they started, what's happened, the whole storyline, because they want you to be a part of the family. We actually call our fan base the WWE Universe, because it is inclusive. And then I've amplified that to say, well, the WWE Universe is not just our fan base, it's our employees, it's our superstars, it's our partners, it's anybody who touches our brand. That's the WWE Universe.
Yeah, I remember watching as a kid the early iteration, Hulk Hogan and all those guys, and there would be my grandmother sitting in the back of the room just laughing away and having a ball just watching it. And we're like, all right, this works. So what's next? How do you stay ahead of the next big trend? And in a lot of ways, as you touched on, your dad was the trend setter. How has that gene been passed on to you to
well, God, let's hope
up?
It has. I don't has yet to be proven. So with WrestleMania 1, the goal was really to put WWE on the map, and then also to bring our product to our fans wherever they were all over the world. So it was available on what was called closed circuit television, where people would actually go to the arenas to watch the big screens. And in essence was the beginning of pay-per-view. So my father's actually credited by many people with pioneering the entire pay-per-view industry. Fast forward to 6 years ago, we were first to launch the WWE Network, our OTT service. So we were right behind Netflix and Hulu. And it was a huge risk, but a calculated risk. And we actually had a deal papered with for a linear channel, and took a step back because they wanted to lock up our rights for 10 years. Ooh. And we did some more research, and we found that our fans were 6 times more likely to watch online video. And we realized we had a real opportunity. So we took the risk and cannibalized our own pay-per-view business. We lost money the first year, but we knew we were going to, and we wound up more than doubling what we would make from our pay-per-view business with WWE Network. But now we're at a new place in time, right? Now all these other streaming services are popping up. All of the big giants, Disney, Peacock, all of these different streaming services are coming. So how are we going to fare? And we don't know yet. Ooh. But there's a lot of options out there that we're considering.
I would say the trend looks pretty good in a positive way. We have a lot of business owners and business people and leaders in the community. How would you describe your leadership skills and your leadership qualities, and what kind of advice do you try and pass on to other women who may feel still uncomfortable about stepping out in the front of the room?
So I would say, not necessarily that I'm the greatest leader, but what I have found that works for me is being vulnerable. I think that it's something that's really hard for people to do, but when you can be vulnerable and be your true self and show up to work as your true self, I think that's when you do your best work. I think that's when you shine the brightest. I think that's when you set the best example, and you also show your teams that it's okay for them to do the same thing, because you want to play to your strengths. That was one of the biggest lessons I learned from an executive coach that I had, because all I was focusing on were my weaknesses, and man, I was beating myself up like you can't believe. It's one of the things I have a hard time, reconciling with my own self, right? I'm always trying not to beat myself up and be so hard on myself. And so loving myself is one of the things that I've learned, that I'm trying to learn. But also that you will rise much more if you play to your strengths. And you can hire around for your weaknesses. Get that support. It's a team. That's why it's a team. You all play together. And I tend to not look at it hierarchical. I want to hear from people. Ultimately, there's one decision maker, but listen to everyone and ask. I think that's another thing is, especially with women, whenever I'm in a meeting, which still is predominantly men. I mean, there's just many more men still, especially in the media industry. And I find myself in these rooms, and if there is a woman in there, I will intentionally ask her opinion on something, just to get her voice heard. Especially if I see someone go, that like, oh, I want to say something, but no, I don't think it's a good idea. Or whatever reason you don't say it. We've all been there. And I'll intentionally say, what were you going to say? Because I think you have to get people talking. And then that's where that vulnerability comes in, to not be afraid to actually ask a question or to say your opinion. You have to be confident in yourself and know that you belong in that room. And hold your head high and stand with your shoulders back and be there, be present and own it. Own the moment. If you don't take the risk, it's safer, but you'll never know. How are you going to get ahead if you don't ever take that risk?
You just opened the door for my favorite Mark Twain quote of all time. Why wouldn't you go out on a limb? That's where the fruit is.
I haven't heard that one.
I haven't heard that one. You know what? If it shows up in WrestleMania, I'll just smile. I'll just smile at the screen.
There we go. We could use a new female commentator.
Well, hey now. Woohoo! All right, now I'm a little flustered. And I'm feeling vulnerable. I think especially in this day of social media where there's so much negativity, and especially for a lot of younger girls, and I don't know if your daughters or any of your daughters are living in that space where they're being bombarded by negativity all the time. The NFL has a great thing that they use with a lot of their women's seminars, Who's in Your Huddle? And we too often give way too much credence to the folks up in the rafters who are important. But when it comes to decision making and when it comes to your confidence and your growth, who are those people around you that care about you and that will give you the constructive criticism, right, to help you get better? And it's so important to have people in that space where it's okay to fall flat on your face and they will pick you up and not hold it against you and see that you're actually going to get better as a result of it.
Yep.
I know for most of us, we live in a day where there's 24 hours in it. You sound like you may have an extra hour or two than the rest of us. But what is the day to day like, or what will it be like when WrestleMania is in town for you?
So there's not a lot of sleeping.
No.
Which Ariana Huffington would have a big problem with. No, it's it's not good not to sleep, but there's not a lot of sleeping. You try to maximize the time that you get, but it is important for your brain to sleep. But I still don't get enough sleep, so I haven't figured it out yet either. But there is no one day that is the same. I'm very happy that I'm not competing in WrestleMania this year because that just adds a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah.
But facing Ronda Rousey did actually, and it was in a tag match. It wasn't a singles match, and it was me and my husband, who is a legend in our business, against Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle, both legitimate former gold Olympic medalists. Legitimate. So, no pressure. And it's Ronda's first match ever. And, you only get one chance to make a good impression. And as the villain, it is my job to make her the hero, right? So I had to get in shape.
Yeah.
And it was not easy. And Ronda, had a lot of adrenaline. And she came from the world of UFC and MMA, where you don't exactly pull your punches, right?
They land.
So they land. And let me just say, I took a few live rounds, and I feel so bad for anybody who's ever actually faced the full force of her punch, because that was her trying to pull her punch.
Wow.
And she nearly knocked me out. So, yeah. Yeah, because, we're entertainment.
And you're always on. You're always on. It's not like you can pretend that actually hurt.
Yeah. Well, luckily I was supposed to pretend that it hurt.
Pretend, yes.
But it was not hard to pretend.
No.
Yeah, I couldn't eat chew food for a few weeks regularly.
Oh.
It was accidental. She just got excited and caught me in the jaw. I mean, really. I should have known better. I should have had my teeth grit, and I didn't. And I did quickly after.
Oh, boy.
Said errant shot to the jaw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if do we have a little bit more time or what? Okay. All right. Is there anything that you want to talk about or that you want to share with the folks about WWE? Or I know philanthropy and a lot of community service is a big part of what you guys do as well.
A huge part of what we do, yep. And actually one of our pillars, we have 4 pillars. They are in service, inclusion, empowerment, and hope. So under the empowerment pillar, it's not just for women, but there is a predominance. We have a partnership with Girl Up, which is a part of UN Foundation, and we created a program called Sports for a Purpose for teen girls all over the world to not only learn the value of playing sports and the confidence that it builds and all of the strategy, all of the things that you don't realize you're learning that have true business applications, but also all of the other jobs surrounding sports, right? Sports marketing, whether it's physical training, nutrition, whatever it is. There's so many different opportunities around sports that girls just aren't aware of because, again, they don't hear about it, they don't know about it, they don't see it. They don't see other girls doing it. So we created a program with Girl Up. We also have partnership with UNICEF, all about empowering kids all over the world. We're partnered, I told you about See Her in Sports. We're also partnered with a group called She Is, which is, trying to get more visibility, ratings up, and ticket sales for women in sports. Under our Hope pillar, we have nearly 40-year relationship with Make-A-Wish Foundation, who will be celebrating their 40th anniversary this year. Actually, this is their pin.
Oh, nice.
And earlier today, I had the opportunity to bring a little girl up on stage who's 11 years old, and it's her wish to go to WrestleMania, and I got to surprise her. It was so cool. It was really cool.
They told us you were going to get us to cry at least once.
No.
tonight,
I'm not going for that.
You've
That's
done
not
it.
no. She was so cute. Oh my God. And
That's
she was
gonna
all
be a
nervous, and I
great
brought her
scene.
up and put her in the chair, and she was like. So I felt bad. You know, it was one of those, and I was like, so what school do you go to? And what's your wish? And I was like, okay, but I know what your wish is. So then we went right into it. She was adorable. And then she, of course, was fine backstage and then taking pictures with all the superstars and everything. It was great.
It's amazing. Everybody thinks they want one of these, but then when they get one, they're kind of like,
oh, yeah. But, you know, it's our mission to put smiles on people's faces and to get to see this little girl smile. And then she hugged me backstage, and I was hugging her, and then she put her little head on my shoulder, and I was like, oh, it was like the greatest feeling on earth. And that's what we get to do, because that's what it really means to be a part of WWE, is to see those smiles and to have those precious moments. I mean, that's what it's really all about. And when we're here, when we're in the Tampa community, we're going to do at least a dozen community events. We're doing hospital visits at Shriners and St. Joe's. We're doing a Special Olympics unified game at Plant High School. We're doing our Make-A-Wish Circle of Champions, because we bring kids from all 50 states, and that's going to be at the aquarium. So our anti-bullying campaign called Be a Star, which stands for Show Tolerance and Respect. We're doing that at the Wilbert Davis Boys and Girls Club. I didn't know if you were cheering because of the... Thank you, I appreciate that. You know, so we're doing a number of different events, but that's really, you know, that's what WWE is all about. And I do want to say, I believe that Claire's going to be interviewing you next.
whoa, hey now.
So
I'm gonna switch seats.
Yes, you are, because you're going to be in the hot seat.
Well, I'm gonna just circle back if you ever need me to be involved. I think you've seen my resume, so.
Oh no, I wasn't kidding. That was a bona fide offer.
Let me check with my agent, and I'll make sure I scrap my old contract.
Absolutely.
Well, I think everybody is so appreciative of not only you spending some time with us and sharing your insight, but also what WWE is going to bring to town, not just WrestleMania, but all the things around it. And it's great to hear that the athletes and the performers have such a blast doing what they're doing and being able to reach so many people in a positive way.
It's their favorite part of their job, and they'll tell you that to a man, to a woman.
Well, I think I speak for everybody and say thank you, and
thank you guys.
Best of luck.
Thank you.